A little more about our farm. We actually have the old acequia system. So those are the Spanish acequias that were dug when the Spaniards came, our ancestors. Well, ours are, it's complicated. Everyone's has a complicated background. But that's been a real struggle because we don't have the luxury of push a button and you have water. It's all dependent on snow melts and rainfall. And so as we've seen, things are changing and we don't have the water that we used to have historically. So as I'm working on this farm, I'm trying to create a resilient system that can get by with less water. And that includes building the soil, putting in perennials that can buffer the system a little bit better, so you're not putting in these annuals that, first of all, they don't return back to the soil, but also they tend to struggle more when you do have water shortages. And then I believe using the sheep is a really great way because with sheep, you have so much more flexibility. If you put in a crop, you're committed to that crop to try to get it into production. With sheep, you get halfway through the year and it's looking like a really bad year. Well, it's time to sell some lambs, maybe cut down on some older ewes. And so you just have a lot of flexibility that you wouldn't have. I'm going to talk a lot about sheep because I think sheep are an animal I love. I also think they are the dumbest. They are great animals, but they also just take a lot of care and they are good at doing stupid things. One of the things I think that's so great about sheep is they're super, super efficient. You have an animal that can produce, honestly, I've seen 4 babies out of one mama. So 1 to 4 babies, 4 is pushing it. But 1 to 3, I have ewes that can raise 3. And I will have babies born in May that are ready to eat in end of July. So that is such a fast turnaround. So it gives you so much more flexibility as far as soil health because you really do have those options on when you take them off, when you put them on, how many you have on a piece, stuff like that. And what I've done is I've tried to make every animal count for as much as I possibly can. So that means using every part of an animal. I have some fun stuff to play with here because I wanted to show everyone. That's okay. My name's Elena Miller, Kuile, and I own Cactus Hill Farm down in the southern part of the valley near Capuline. Is that good? Okay. Well, let's see if I have it buried down here. Excuse me from I put everything in a bag, which is, not the best way to carry things, but, oh gosh. It's somewhere down here. Well, I'm going to start backwards because I can't find things in my bag. So I really think honoring a life of an animal is so important. I was actually vegetarian for 7 years. I went to college and I just could not eat meat ethically. And it was really hard to come home because culturally, my Hispano family and just culturally, we raise a lot of meat. That was part of what we eat. And it was just this really awkward situation where my mom would make this amazing meal that we raised on the farm. I'm like, no, Mom, I'm going to go eat some tofu from a box. And it just did not fit with my culture, with who I was. And so I decided to raise animals for meat because I wanted to do it right. I wanted them to have a good life. I wanted them to go to slaughter without having been in feedlots, being fed things they're not supposed to be eating. And so part of that is just that responsibility I take really seriously. So I save every part that possibly can be saved. This is the skin. And I have them tanned. These are birch bark tanned. I use a tannery. This is the only local company that I don't use. This is a company in Argyle, Wisconsin. I like them because they're women-owned and also because they do the natural birch tanning. I also do a lot of different breeds. So just to give you an idea, as that one passed through, that is a Merino, the brown one. And then this is a Wensleydale, which is a heritage breed. I love the Merinos. They're great, but they are a modern breed that has changed a lot. Sometimes with the heritage breeds, you get a little bit more resilience. They are tougher. They're stronger mothers. And so I mix them together. That can be challenging because the Merinos actually have a higher feed need than the rest of the breeds, but I am stubborn and I'm like, we will make this work. I also brought I wanted to kind of show the steps to the process that we go through. This is raw wool, so this is just right off the sheep. And I'm hoping after I talk, I really want questions because I would rather that than me just talking to y'all, but this is Merino. It's a natural color and also a white. And I seem to have lost one of my little locks in here. Well, if you see a tuft of wool wandering around, that's mine. You can keep it. This is a Wensleydale. That's a Wensleydale. And you know what's really interesting, as I've messed around with the breeds, merino is known because of the textile industry. And if you can see how fine the fibers are. The micron count is really fine. That's why it's so great for close to skin wear. But what I found is some of these long wools, which have a very coarse wool, depends on how you spin them. You can spin them to be the most beautiful textile as well, and they can still be close to skin. And so you're preserving this really amazing breed that has unique qualities. Also, Wensleydale is resistant to a lot of diseases, and you get a beautiful yarn as well. It is, yes, yes. I did raise Navajo churro as well, which is a very Southwest breed. There is one big downfall with the churro. For my operation, because really soil health is such a focus, they take a very long time to get to weight. And so they end up having to be on the farm for a lot longer, which just did not work with how I was trying to do my soil management. So after it's raw wool, it's processed into something called roving, which is cleaned and carded, and it's kind of like all the fibers are lying in one direction. And from there you can make yarn. So this is some of my yarn. This is actually chamisa, rabbit brush, which we all know that one. This is cochineal, the red, which is a bug, and then the black is a natural undyed fiber that I have.
So you have a sheep that's that black.
I have a sheep that's that black, and I'm really trying to get like a black sheep, but it's just, they always are a little bit like brown, and then their tips get bleached in the sun, and it's just hard to get black. With alpaca you can get a real black, but with sheep I'm close, but I don't think I'll ever be right at black. That's from the plant of the chamisa, from rabbit brush. And I use a local Colorado company to do my wool spinning. So a lot of my processing, I try to keep it all in the Southwest or Colorado. Unfortunately, the pelts, I just really think that natural tanning is so important because they actually use formaldehyde to tan in the tradition, like the more modern tanning techniques. And so I do send the pelts out further just because the quality, actually, and interestingly, I think this is birch bark tanned, lasts longer than the formaldehyde ones. Tend to get really brittle and they fall apart faster. So the longevity of the product also. The skin. Yeah, there's a whole art to it, and I don't do a lot of that myself, but hopefully soon I'll be offering some workshops on that. Then, of course, after yarn, it's made into, this is knitted, but you can weave, you can do all kinds of different ways of turning it into the final textile. You want to hand that around?
Did you knit this?
I did knit that, yes. That's a pattern, actually, that's specific for my yarn that was made by a lady. She's amazing. She's Dutch and Navajo, which I'm also Dutch, so I'm always like Dutch and Hispanic, Dutch and Navajo. We have a lot in common. Not really, but I like to pretend. And she did this beautiful sweater pattern for me. So, yeah, and then this is a bit of an odd timing situation. So the last part of my story before I want to open it up to questions was in January, I actually opened up this adorable little store on my farm where I was selling products from the farm, but other farms as well. Unfortunately, I have a little bit of an awkward situation. I had a crazy person who basically threatened me off of my property. So I'm going to be opening up a new store in Antonito. So I hope you all will join me once it's open, and it's going to be selling all these amazing fiber products, but I'm also hoping to open up to some other producers, which I really couldn't do in my small space. I'm trying to see it as an opportunity. The little store in January was awesome, and people were coming to learn about fiber art and knitting and spinning and just kind of getting to know the sheep, stuff like that. So I'm hoping to offer more of that community space because I know my talk was all about community. Ironically, right now I'm like not doing that. But well, I am, just in different ways. So I do have a little GoFundMe, and not to be like shamelessly asking for funds, but if you feel like contributing to open up this little local food store and local fiber store, I would be honored. So I'll just leave these here. And I really wanted the bulk of my talk to be, I can actually hand them around, the bulk of my talk to be questions, because I feel like that's the best way to get to what people want to learn about. And if they have questions about sheep, about fiber, I will say one last, again, about fiber and the world we live in. We are in the age of fast fashion. Like, we basically can clothe 10 generations ahead of us in all that we buy and that we throw away. And unfortunately, a lot of it is polyester, which is a forever plastic. Those will break down. They will be in our atmosphere forever. One product I did not bring because I'm out of stock right now, but wool is actually a fertilizer. So when you take that sweater that I passed around and you are done with it and you throw it out, that's actually going to have nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, micronutrients, and also tons of carbon, which we all know is amazing. So sheep are an amazing way to sequester carbon. Wool itself is an amazing way to basically put carbon back into the soil. And I really advocate for this idea of slow fashion. I mean, we need to wear less. We need to wear stuff that matters, that has identity, that has a story. You look at cultures all around the world. Clothing was art. We have lost that. And it should be art. I mean, I wear these clothes because this is a piece of 60-year-old fabric from Guatemala. It's hand woven. I mean, look at it. There's no holes. It's not even losing its color. I mean, that's the quality that you get when clothing isn't just a plastic bag that we're basically putting on for a short amount of time to throw away. So that's why I advocate for sheep, because they do a lot of things. You got the meat, you've got manure, returning back to your soil, and you've got this amazing textile that we should be wearing more of. So, yeah. Okay. Yay! Yay to wool! So I'm hoping to open it up to questions. I really wanted to allow the audience to ask me questions just so we can kind of get more targeted to what people are interested in. I do both, yes. Yeah. Mostly it's the males, right? Because the females I use to keep the genetic lines and to have a new mother coming in, and unfortunately it's like extreme reverse sexism, because it's like all those boys, especially the castrated ones, so wethers, they are great for meat, but for fiber, they're kind of a dead end as far as they can't reproduce. So that's mostly what goes to butcher, and then of course, depending on how many numbers I have to keep or not, depends on how many more go to slaughter after that. But they go right on the field, right to the butcher. I always say they have one bad day, and that's the goal. They have a great life, and then hopefully a very low stress ending.
Do you plant anything for them to graze on, or are they just sort of grazing on what already exists?
I have been I'm experimenting still, and George, I'm glad George is here because George has a lot more experience with this stuff. What I've been working on right now is native grasses, dryland grasses, and clover. And the reason is if you just put the dryland grasses, you tend to just get nitrogen deficient really quickly, and then they start to not produce as well. So I'm mixing in the clover because it's a great forage, and also because it really helps with the nitrogen fixing. I see a big difference, like on the fields that I've really worked on. I have one field, and I wish I would have taken pictures of it because it's a gravel bar. We have horrible soils. We don't really have soil. We just have gravel. It's just rocks. And this one field is like growing mushrooms this year, and it looks amazing. And it's with a lot less water because we actually cut that sprinkler back simply because we didn't have the water to keep running it. So it's really making a big difference. The improved organic matter, and then those perennial cover crops. I sometimes throw in some other traditional cover crops like annuals, but I'm leaning more towards the perennials simply because every year you don't have to go back and plant. But I do know some successful operations that are doing like those cocktail mixes with annuals. For me, I just want to stay away from having to plant every year, and I really want to do more spot planting instead of having to redo the whole field. But it's all moved towards no-till, which is also hard with rocks. Again, no-till drills don't really work with rocks. They're designed for stubble. So that's been a real struggle for us, is how to get the no-till going when you have rocks.
But you're only growing for the sheep. You're not trying to harvest it. It's not like the cow operation where you grow something for the cattle on it. You're just growing for sheep.
I do both. So I also have an organic hay production. So I basically base it off of so basically, like one field, for example, I'll do like 2 cuttings on, and then I'll graze it I'll graze it once with the sheep, so it'll be like the 3rd cutting. And then there's another field that just doesn't produce very well, so that one I only graze. So I kind of just base it off of what that field is capable of doing, and then go from there. But I do produce all of my own hay, which I feed, and then I also produce a surplus that I do sell to people. And we are dry land and also irrigated dry land. That's what we have. So we do have water rights. We just don't have tons and tons of water. So
Like how many inches you put on the field that you're only grading?
oh gosh, I did not measure it. I could probably get you those numbers though, because I would have the irrigation schedule, but I wouldn't be able to tell you off the top of my head.
Flood irrigation, you said, but you mentioned a sprinkler.
I do have both. I have, because we have this old historic acequia water system. We have a hybrid system. We have some center pivots and we have some flood irrigation. It's probably 50-50. The surface water rights. The flood irrigated does do better with drought, just generally, actually. It's kind of that counterintuitive thing that we've all been told, like water efficiency, but as soon as you have no water, the flood is going to do so much better than the sprinkler irrigated. It is. I really push back on that because I also really wonder, our family has been in that area since the 1850s, flood irrigating inefficiently. And so I always ask myself how much of the water table was artificial in the first place. And then we sat there and said, oh, efficiency, 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 when all these inefficiencies, I don't know. My analogy is a tree is an inefficient use of water. If we want an ecosystem, we have to be inefficient at points. Yeah, so I will own that, again, it is a process. I am in the process of changing over the management since I bought the farm from my dad last year. Right now, I do graze I put the whole bunch together, so it'll be about 600 head on 30 acres. And then that lasts them about 3 weeks, and then I move them off. And then normally, on a good year, I don't come back there. I might take a cutting if it looks like there's good growth. But I'm working right now to build the permanent infrastructure so that I don't accidentally kill my sheep with the electric fences, which has been my experience in the past. And I'm hoping in the future that concentration is going to be a lot higher because I'm going to be able to use electric fence in between the permanent fencing. But I tried it with the wool sheep, and I called them like sheep nets, not fencing, because they were just getting stuck in them. It was a mess. And I bought that really fancy stuff. So I'm like going old school. And I'm going to try hot on the bottom and a totally different system. I thought, go overkill with the sheep because they're not going to feel it. But I actually think you want to do the opposite. You just want to make sure they have like something really on their nose. And I'm going to try some things like putting peanut butter and stuff like that. So I'll let you know. It's a work in progress. Right now, the permanent infrastructure has made a huge difference, though, because we're just not having to manage them as much with those permanent fences. It's not as great for wildlife, but I don't use barbed wire, keep the gates open. It's all low fencing. So I think it keeps the sheep in, but it really, deer, everything can cross over it. That's another thing I've discovered is when I first started, I would do like wildlife friendly fencing, which is just strings of wire, and realize that's not a good idea with sheep. They just crawl between it. So you really do have to use field fence if you're going to have safe fencing. And because we're a mixed cropping system, we do produce alfalfa for hay. You just have to be so careful because sheep, like 5 minutes in alfalfa and you're going to be picking up dead sheep all over the place. They are very prone to bloat. And they're not very smart about it. So you just really have to be smarter than they are. They're sneaky. They are sneaky. I built a brand new fence and then they like found the one little tiny hole and like spent all day working on it. And I was just like, really? Come on. They do not respect me, but that's okay.
Would there be any difference in raising sheep for wool versus for meat as far as the operation or anything like that? Or could you do both simultaneously?
I do both simultaneously. Some people do not believe that that's possible, but I say that it is. So, some people that are just only a meat operation, right now in the United States, there's a wool crisis. Like people are dumping wool into the ground. There is no market for it. It's absolutely dead. So I understand why people want to raise animals for meat because right now I have other ranchers that are telling me they have like 10 years of wool that they haven't been able to move. I had one lady told me she just dug a hole with her backhoe and just like put it in the ground. So that's a tragedy in my opinion, and shame on us for not letting China and all these places take our manufacturing, because that's really what it comes down to, is the infrastructure has left the country. You know, I have messed around with different things. I used to have like a meat bunch and then a wool bunch. That was hard because you really have to keep the genetics separate, and you have basically like not usable wool off a percentage of your bunch. So a few years ago, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to do them all. And it has worked really well. I really advocate, merinos are great. You do have to find breeders that are breeding for their body as well, which because merinos can be really thin and not so great on the, you know, on their body, on their carcass. But the Wensleydales, the BFLs, these are the heritage breeds that I have. Tunis, Teeswater, any of those long wools have as good of a carcass as a meat breed. And they produce an amazing fleece. And so they will gain, because I've had both. I've had Blackface, Suffolk. I had a Hamp Suffolk mix to start with. They will gain just as quickly as those. And they're a wool breed. Mm-hmm.
Do you ever work with other property owners that may, like, I don't know the proper way to say it, but let's say borrow 50 head of sheep to come, like, clear portions of their land? Or if not, do you know a good practice to go about doing stuff like that? Because I feel like it could help your operation and then help them replenish their land as well.
Yeah, I mean, I get nervous lending my sheep out because, like, I want them back again. I love them, even though they drive me crazy. So I have had people who like to have their fields fertilized, though. So they'll do, like, a fall grazing, which is really great for me because then I get a fall grazing and then they get all this manure back on their place. So, yes, I have found that. Oftentimes we do, like, a trade or something like that so that way I don't make money. They don't make money off me. We just kind of trade like a barter system out there. So that is definitely something that happens quite a bit where people want to graze a place and have the sheep out there for a bit. Mm-hmm.
Do you primarily sell directly to market, or do you sell direct to consumer, or do you do a little bit of both? And if it's mainly market, how have like market practices influenced the way that you farm and raise your sheep?
Yeah, so I used to sell to more like wholesaler brokers. And the wool thing, I have actually done more with the wool. I just decided one day, I was like, I'm going to retail all of it. And so I do retail all the wool I produce through a whole variety of products. So you're looking at some of them. Raw fleece is actually very marketable. People want to work with raw fleece. That's actually my top product, believe it or not, which I'm like, sweet, because I get to put a fleece in a bag, tell somebody about it, and then they buy it. Like, oh my gosh, that's a no-brainer. Especially with those long wools. I really advocate for those because you can sell a fleece for like $200, $250 for a really high quality long wool fleece. That's a lot of money for raw wool. Of course, if you make it into yarn, every step gives you more value. Then the really bad end is what I make into wool pellets. And so that goes for fertilizer. Unfortunately, that's been a big problem, is like I don't have a manufacturer for that right now. So I just bought my own system and I'm waiting for it to come in, and I'm really excited about it because now I can start making my own pellets, which I hope will help a little bit more than me. It's a small system. It's not like this huge industrial thing, but at least I can maybe offer it to some other producers, smaller producers as well, who want to turn their wool into fertilizer as well. You can use wool as fertilizer without the pellets, but the pellets are just a little bit more like cleaner because raw wool everywhere just gets a little messy. Now on the meat side, I actually used to work with a butcher who basically, it was a New Mexico natural meat market. He would buy most of my animals and finish them. But recently, I also made a commitment to them. I was like, I'm going to do this. So I have not 100%, but a high percentage transition to direct sale all my live animals, or my meat animals. So that looks like a lot of whole and half animal sales. Then I do also have several wholesale accounts with restaurants. And then I was selling in person until drama, but I will be selling again in person, bundles, stuff like that, direct to consumer. Made a bunch of really good sausages, stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm going to make it. Like last year, I had like a few animals I just wasn't quite able to do that way. So then I worked with the same people that I've worked with in the past. But I try really hard not to take them to feedlots and also to sale barns, because what's the point of spending all this time giving them this amazing life and then they end their life in a way that I'm not okay with? And so that's been one of my really big things, and is like trying to at least see them through to a situation that I feel okay with. Oh gosh, so much more work. Oh yeah, totally. Especially whole and half sales is tough because you have to have several, like 5 or 6 conversations with one person to make a sale. So you have to be like, hello, you wanted a lamb. It's at the butcher today. Pick it up the next day. Here's your invoice. Oh, you didn't pay your invoice. I need the money. So it can be a lot of, depending on the customer. Some customers are easy. They just do it and you don't have to do anything. Some customers are like, oh, could you deliver to me in California? And you're like, no, I don't know. I'm not a delivery service. So I had a joke last year. I was like, we should call it Elena's delivery service, because I don't know what was happening, but so many customers were like, well, could you bring it to me? And you can't just leave it at the butcher. So I'm a nice person. I kept saying yes. And I was just like, why am I? Ugh. So this year I'm like, no, it's at the butcher. You get it. So yes, it does add a lot of work, but it also adds a lot of value, because if you were to sell an animal, like at the sale barn, you're maybe getting like $150 from it. If I sell it direct to somebody, I can make like $300 off the animal plus $300 off of pelts. So that's a $600. So I feel like in my mind, it's worth it, but it does have to be a certain number to be worth it. And so that's kind of how I've reconciled it. And then of course, when you do the cuts of meat, then you get you can get like 1,000 per animal, but that's cutting it into smaller pieces that you just have to like move individually. Yeah. Ironically, the cuts can be easier though, because you don't have to have that whole thing with the customer. You're just like, you want chops, buy the chops, see you later. Whereas with the whole and half, you really do have to like work through a whole process with them. And I love my whole and half customers. So if any of you buy whole and half lambs from me, thank you. I really appreciate it. So no complaints, just the relationship. That's what it looks like, which I think is good. Yes. Yes, and trucking lambs to this butcher, that butcher, and then somebody doesn't want to work with that butcher. So, there's just a lot of logistics and moving them around and stuff like that. So, yeah, hopefully soon launching is going to be kind of a CSA model, because I am trying to do all of my animals direct sale. So the CSA model, I think, is going to help me just up those numbers and scale it up a little bit. Yeah, it's all about scaling, because it's like you can get to a certain number with whole and half animals, and then you can get to a certain number with cuts, and it's just trying to get to where I want to get, which is direct selling all my animals. So the CSA has an exception, because you can, since you're selling a share of the animal, you don't have to have USDA butcher. Any retail has to have the USDA butcher and also be inspected. So I have to have all the licenses to do that. Any restaurant sales, same thing, you have to have a manufactured food license plus be inspected and have USDA butcher. Retail, same thing, retail food license. And so, yeah, so the legislation on shares is easier, and whole and half, there's an exception as well, because that's the same thing. They own the animal. And so you're not responsible. As long as they're comfortable with it not being USDA, then that's all that's needed. They just have to be comfortable with the butcher that you're bringing it to. He was, yes. So now I have one in Westcliff, which is a long way away. Yeah, the valley was no, New Mexico was closer. Yeah, it's a little bit of a drive. It is. I don't love it. I lost my spare tires somewhere, like in the middle of a road. That's so dangerous too. I was like, oh my gosh, I was so embarrassed. Anyway, I have some skills, not good ones sometimes.
If you're to get like a whole or a half of the ones, who kills the animal?
A butcher, a non-USDA butcher.
You have to go to a butcher. You can't just go.
Oh, you can come to my house and get a lamb anytime you want. I love that. That is actually I have a lot of really great customers from Mexico, and they just come and do it on the farm, and I'm totally fine with that. So, yeah.
Do they kill it on your farm?
They do, yeah. Uh-huh.
The sheep way down here, I can't remember her name. Susan? She did a talk here. Anyway, she had some guy come and put one of the lambs in his pickup truck.
I had a guy come for Ramadan or something. He wanted a lamb, and he put it in the trunk of his car. And I was like, for me trying to be so ethical with these animals, I'm like, I'm not sure about this one. Like, I kind of was already committed, but I was just like, okay, I don't even know. Just kill it soon. Don't make it sit in the trunk forever. I know, poor thing, right?
Sorry, 2 questions. First, the pellets that you were talking about, and or if you have a resource for the raw fleece for insulation. So have you, we're about to insulate a very tiny greenhouse for the roof. Have you experience with that using wool?
Yeah, I mean, you can come. I will find you wool for no cost or low cost anytime you want, but it will not be carded and cleaned. It can get bugs in it. The company, unfortunately, there's really only one in the United States, Havelock Wool. Their prices are not bad. Unfortunately, they don't use American wool, which I'm like, so many companies don't use American wool. Smart Wool, Colorado company, does not use American wool. I'm like, what is wrong with you guys? So they don't use American wool, but they are a good company. So, and they have good insulation, and you can buy online. Havelock, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of predators with coyotes and stuff, how is that?
I think sheep, I call them the potato chips of the natural world. It's like everything eats them, like not even just like a snack, So no effort. So I'll answer this and then I'll get to you. I have a variety of, I call them non-lethal predator options because I really don't want to be a hunter to be a rancher. And when I know a lot of ranchers do hunt a lot. I do not. I do have to shoot dogs sometimes. That's the biggest problem in my area. But I've had everything under the sun. Mountain lions, bears, foxes, coyotes, dogs are the worst. And what I have done is I have the Pyrenees. They are great. They are worth their weight in gold. I definitely recommend. They do not do well alone. You need to get 1 or 2 of them, or 3 or 4, or I have way too many. So anyway, I'm not trying to hoard them. They just keep appearing. But so I have created in the middle of each of my paddocks a big tall fence that I pen them up at night. Okay, there's downfalls and there's advantages. The advantage is they don't get eaten by predators. The downfall is sheep are very prone to a lot of diseases. So things like mastitis, pneumonia will spread faster since you're keeping them so close together at night. I kind of do the cost analysis, and I just think, well, every time I leave my sheep out for the night, I get a coyote attack or something, and that's just horrible. A mountain lion came and ate like my huge beautiful merino, like 300-pound merino. I paid so much money for him. And so I've built like Alcatraz. My barn has like sliding doors and dogs in it and cameras. And because I just, everyone was like, well, go hunt the mountain lion. I'm like, I don't want to go hunt the mountain lion. I'd rather just be like, mountain lion, dinner is not here. And so that's kind of how I've done it, is these big tall pens. And they work good. But, you do have to do the analysis of like, you will get more diseases. What I have been working on is actually this idea of a manure pack. So it's a really nice place to start building up straw, manure, and then you have a source. And what I do in the spring, I come in, load that all up, throw that out on the fields. And I think like that one field I was telling you about with the mushrooms growing in, which I'm so excited about it. Really, I've been doing that for about 3 years on that field. And I think a lot of it, why it's looking so much better is because of that, of putting the manure out. I've also put compost, but it's just not as hot for grass. And the manure, yeah. So that's what I've been doing with my non-lethal predator management, and also building some good organic matter as well. I like that. I am that person. Do dairy? No. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. Well, the thing is, like with meat and wool and sheep being sheep, you have to be there a lot. But if dairy, you really have to be there. Like you have to be milking them daily or twice daily. And you know, I like to go on vacation still, and my dad likes to go on vacation still. And yeah, so no, I don't do the dairy. I've been looking at some of my BFL though, and I'm like, is it possible that you could do really amazing meat, really amazing wool, and you look like you have an udder for milk? So I don't know. I keep looking at. Yeah. Yeah, and none of the breeds I have are milk, but the BFL does look like it has a good udder. I will tell you, like Merino and Rambouillet, which are really common breeds, especially Rambouillet is like super common in the West. They will not let milk down except for their baby, and their udder is not at all like, if you ever saw their udder, it's just, there's no way you're gonna have that as a milk animal. But the BFL, I'm like, I mean, I know goats a little bit, and I'm like, maybe it could do all three. I don't really want to do all three, but somebody else could do that. That would be I think that'd be a really cool experiment to see if somebody could do that.
So kind of hypothetical question, thinking about the regenerative ag piece of it. If you had a neighbor's farm, say, that you could get cheap that was, disused land, like no longer any irrigation, could you see a scenario where you could use sheep to make that effective or make use of the land with sheep?
Yeah, kosher is actually the best feed possible that you can have sheep on. They will gain better and they will not bloat. It has higher protein than alfalfa. And it's actually, well, alfalfa will bloat them, so you don't get the bloating. So what was that? Why doesn't nitrogen? There, George knows. I don't actually know. He does. We have real witness to the legacy of sheep. I know. And I love them. Like, I just think they're the most amazing animal. I love their personalities. I love their wool. I love their meat. And then they just do these things. And you're just like, I really can't understand you, like, oh yeah. Yeah, I have one field and that's it. And it's just for hay production so that we have something to feed them. And that field is not even connected. It's like off adjacent, because I agree. And they'll find the one plant that like survived everything and eat it and bloat. And so I don't know, sheep are just sheep. On that one, I don't know, George may have a little bit more experience on that, because I've done a little bit of grazing like in non-irrigated, more like prairie. I'm not seeing like a huge return, but I also wasn't very consistent about it. Like, and I really kind of did it only once in a while. So I think George may be better about answering that question on like.
Are you talking about reclaiming farmland?
Yeah.
It's much different to reclaim a piece of farmland than plowed because you don't have soil.
Right. Yeah.
So you have to start with something. So you could feed on that. You can feed sheep or cattle on it and waste a lot of feed by covering the ground with waste and mix the manure and the dung and the urine as you go across. And systematically feed on that a little, and then leave it covered. So that the soil is covered, and then you start to build some soil. Then you can think about, first of all, things that are annual.
Yeah.
Successional process.
Right. And all the weeds.
So you get weeds, and weeds are what sheep love, and they should great on weed. So you utilize that, and then you can scatter seed, whatever. The perennial grasses are all here. They come anyway, but one sweet thing.
I will say, I have to say that the fields that I have, the like prairie land that I have grazed versus places that I haven't grazed is better. Like the quality of the grass is better. You don't have as much like old growth. It's just kind of choking out the new growth. And so you can see, like, I have one place and I don't own the next property over, but he's never grazed it. And you can just see the difference in like the blue grandma does really good on my place. Like there's just a lot more happening on my place. A lot. Yeah. And in his, you can just tell that it's like, if you really walk out there, it looks good from the road, but it's just a lot of dead brush. And once you get out there, you can just see it's like a lot of exposed dirt, whereas mine does have a lot of the ground cover. So I do think you do see the benefit. I mean, I didn't turn it into a grassland, but I don't know, like I didn't do it consistently. It's not a dust bowl. Yeah, I think that it really did some benefits, and you can really see the difference, especially when you compare it to the neighbors. But I don't think it's not like, like this luscious Garden of Eden. But
So then a kind of follow-up question on that is, would there be a demand for that many sheep? Right, so I'm thinking about like the sub-district 1 in particular. We're talking tens of thousands of acres probably, right? If we do something that keeps it from turning into a dust bowl, it doesn't give us more of those credits. Is this something, and then if all of a sudden we've got, 500% more sheep in the valley, does that just buy everybody?
I mean, sheep have been declining a lot in the United States, like historically and ongoing. Yeah. I mean, I really think that we need to be pushing CSU extension. I've been pushing through the universities. We need to start building some infrastructure for wool in this country, in the valley. There's some research. CSU Extension just did that study on the wool pellets. So that's really exciting because we can maybe start using this for a fertilizer. I mean, for me, in the artsy world that I live in, I would love to see wool be used for textiles, which was what they're intended for. So I think we should be advocating for the sheep industry died because the infrastructure died. And basically what happened, because my parents actually, I think so. I mean, well, we got outcompeted by New Zealand because my grandpa was a sheep person. I don't know. I didn't tell you this part of the story. Okay. My grandpa was a sheep person, and we've been sheep people for since 16, 14, whenever my first ancestors came, and I don't know. Anyway. And my dad sold all the sheep. And so the reason was because you just couldn't even sell them because the market got flooded with New Zealand. And then the wool, there was a subsidy for wool that went away to the USDA, and so there just wasn't a market anymore. And so I was the one who made him, and he was crying the whole time. He's like, "Really? You want to do sheep again? I did that already. That was horrible." I was like, "This time will be different. I promise. It's gonna be different this time." Yeah, exactly. There you go, Etsy. So yeah. So anyway, I think that's a really, really cool idea, and I think that we do need to advocate more for the infrastructure around sheep and wool, particularly. Because if we could get better, right now U.S. companies are buying New Zealand wool, and they should be buying American wool. But the problem is we just don't have the infrastructure and the quality, because we didn't breed. I mean, New Zealand and Australia are 100 years ahead of us in breeding, and we just haven't been breeding for what the textile industry needs, and don't have the infrastructure. It's all in China, all of it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They're all gone. I mean, a lot of the textile, there used to be a lot. I mean, wool was a really big part up until World War II. Wool was a huge part of the American textile, industrial, whatever. And it just has moved. And now you're hard put to find wool that isn't processed in China. Mostly it's produced in New Zealand, then processed in China, then sold in the United States. I need the other parts. I struggle with processing. I have a wonderful mill, and I've worked with them for years, and they're great, but I mean, I don't have product a lot of the time. And these are small mills. So these are micro mills. So we need both. We need micro mills for people who are wanting to do more the artisan thing, and we need really big mills for people who are wanting to put this amazing product into clothing, into hats, into shirts, sweaters, socks, all those things. So we need both, and we don't have either. I would say that there's some micro mills in Colorado. We actually do better than most states. But it's kind of not good. It's a wool crisis. No. What was that? I asked Smart. I don't know. I have never talked to Havelock, but I did ask Smart Wool once. I was like, "Why aren't you using American wool?" And they were just like, "We can't. The quality is so much higher out of New Zealand, and they can prove the micron count and the length and how it will spin." And I guess with American wool, they're just not getting that. But yeah, and they really focused on that. And right now, the American wool market is not in the United States; it's in China. And so, if you raise wool here, you can find customers that will basically want to buy to China. But it's I don't know, the price is horrible. It's less than $1 a pound right now for.
process wool even to socks, right? So like the New Zealand wool is probably turning into socks in China and then shipping over as socks. Like we're not making the socks here.
Right.
So if you have the wool here and process it here without the sock plant here, like that whole section is all overseas.
Well, like companies like Havelock, though, they're not buying finished wool. They're buying like cleaned and a certain quality and grade of wool, and then they're doing the rest. They're doing the processing. So there is a market for like kind of like halfway process. It's just we don't even supply that. We don't supply any of it. And so that's, if we could even get to like one part of the process, even just cleaned wool would be a market for that. So, yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, I don't know. If I was the king of the world, queen, I would be like, more wool. No, I don't know. I don't know how to solve it, but I do think that more infrastructure needs to be built around the American wool industry. So I haven't done this as much. I have grazed cattle after sheep. They've done well, except for fencing is hard because you're trying to design like a universal fence. And we had some problems with that. But I've heard really good things. Like cows and sheep don't have the same parasites. So it's a really good way to clean up a field. And I'm hoping to add some cows soon. I just don't have them yet. But in the future, I will add some cows because one problem I'm having with the sheep is once the grass gets really tall and a little drier, they're just not interested. And they only want the tender stuff. And so I really want to add the cows so that they can because I'm like having to go out and cut this tall grass. And I'm like, this is not what I'm trying to do here. So I'm going to be adding cows hopefully soon. I've also heard good things about that because the cows can help protect the sheep from all the things that eat the sheep. So I've heard good things about that. I have not done that. I've always done followed through. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm still learning, One time a horse did punt a sheep through the air. So I definitely don't put the horses in with the sheep because I was not good. It was very woolly, so it survived, but it was just like this woolly ball just tumbling. And I was like, no way. So the horses and the sheep are not friends. Yeah, horse. I haven't tried donkeys. I did try alpacas and a llama, and they were mixed reviews. I had one alpaca named Moses because he kept leading the sheep to the promised land, which meant that anytime a gate was even open, it would just be the alpaca and all the sheep at a full run, and you'd be trying to catch them before they took off. He was so smart. And then I had a llama that was just I don't want anything to do with sheep. So it was just always leaving and jumping over fences, and I'd find him at the neighbors. And so, but the same is true with Pyrenees. They are not all winners. I've had to get rid of some Pyrenees because I'm just you don't get your job. You don't understand. You are here to watch sheep, and they're they don't always. And same with alpacas. And I had one really good alpaca, but the other one was no, definitely not. So, any other? Oh, yes.
I may be experiencing some confirmation bias at, on my social media, I'm getting all these ads for activewear and companies that are making wool products, but I'm seeing elastin in it and spandex, and it's all coming. And so when you say infrastructure, and I'm not quite sure what it is, but can you expand? Are we from start to finish infrastructure you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm learning myself, so I will be humbly say that. But I will say one good thing about apparel. There are some companies, and I will name them, even though I am promoting the big guys, Patagonia and Columbia. Both, Columbia particularly, has vowed to only use U.S. wool. And they have found, but they also have to be promoting regenerative practices. So basically, the farms they're working with have to be doing practices based on animal welfare and regenerative work. And so they have, that was a big advocacy project that came out of California through the Fiber Shed project. They were able to get those two companies, which are big companies, to commit to American wool. And actual wool. They use actual wool, but they do mix it with other things, which is unfortunate because they're well, okay, but I guess it's better than nothing. We got to start somewhere. So to process raw wool, you basically have to start with scouring, which that is a big process because you have hot water. You have to do it correctly because you can do all kinds of fun stuff and felt the wool. And then basically you're getting all the lanolin out, which lanolin can be used for lotion. Don't ask me how they do that. That one I do not know. But basically and then basically after the scouring, which is hot water and a little bit of mild detergent, and you have to maintain the properties of the wool, then most of it's mechanical from there. So it's picking, which is basically just like separating it. That gets a lot of the hay and stuff out. Then carding, which lays it all in a line. Then spinning. And then from there it can be made into textiles. So that's the basic idea, and there's different things you can do along the way. Like Havelock is basically using a felting process, which is another process I did not talk about, which is just basically making wool into a fabric without spinning it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's so finely knitted that you just can't tell that it's knitted. So it could be that it's just like you can't see the stitches. Felting is, I'm all over the place. So there you go. It's not you, it's me. No. But felting basically, and I have one little, I was like, I forgot to bring felt, but I did bring one little bag here. This is a felt. So basically, because wool has little barbs on it, you can make a fabric without having to do all the spinning and everything like that. But they do use it, like this is actually used for chemical cleanup, wool. A lot of industrial products are made out of that. You can make clothing out of it. You can do a bunch of stuff. Now this one's been spun and then knitted and then felted. So it's not exactly felt, but you can do it without the knitting process. You can do felt. So wool's cool. It has a lot of things you can do with it. But as far as the processing, that's the basic idea. And we do not have the infrastructure for that. Oh yes, felting is the best. They were mostly woven and then felted. So there's a process where you make a fabric and then you felt it and you just shrink it. It's like when you shrink a wool sweater, that's felting, and that's an oopsie, but you can do it intentionally to make a really amazing fabric. And you can actually, like, prehistorically, before spinning and all the fancy things that we have now, they believe the first textile was felt. So pelts and felt, because basically you could just take the wool, agitate it, and you could get a product from that. And there are very good felters. I am like a very beginner felter, but it's fun. I like it because I actually go from raw wool to a rug, like without doing anything, because I want to not do all the things.
Like, what came first for you? Was it the sheep or the textiles?
It's like the chicken or the egg. That's a great question. That is a great question. Okay. Oh my gosh, if I can even remember. Okay. Well, I was in college. I didn't actually do any of these things at home. Like, this is not what I grew up with because my dad had sold all the sheep. So I was in college and my sister started knitting and I was like, oh, I learned how to crochet, but like really bad yarn, like polyester, like my grandma taught me. And so I knew how to crochet, and my sister had started knitting, and she was like, Dad, we need to get 2 sheep. And my dad was like, no, we will never get 2 sheep. One will be dead, then the other one will die. And he's just like, no way. And so it was like through my travels, because I was able to do this study abroad program, I think I fell in love with just the art of textiles, of how cultures wear clothing as a representation. And I've come home and I still really appreciate that. And I feel like we're really missing that. Like, we're missing that like expression and that art that comes through textiles. And so, again, I did start with those 6 pancos that they were meat sheep. I just was like, I'm going to get some sheep, I don't know, and see what happens. And then I thought, if you're going to do sheep and you love textiles, you probably should get wool sheep and not just like meat sheep. So that's when I got into the wool breeds, was after a few meat breeds that were like, it was like sad violin music with these stupid pancos, because they like kept trying to die and I just kept trying to save them, and they all made it, but it was just like this really like that school project that you're like actually really bad at. It was that one. Yeah, it was not good. So that's kind of how I got started, but yeah.
To kind of pick up off of that and some of the other things you said. So your grandfather had been like a sheep farmer, but your father sold all the sheep and he wasn't, and you picked it back up. Was all the land still owned by your father, and what was being done with that land in the in-between time, and was it difficult for you then to get sheep back onto being able to like graze on it and stuff like that?
Yeah, so my dad kind of just had a traditional farm. Like he did alfalfa, so we did hay, and then so he would do like 6 years of alfalfa, pull it out and do barley or wheat or a grain for a couple, maybe 2 to 3 years. And that's kind of how he ran it up until just recently. And him and I, it hasn't been perfect. Like being a generational farm, it sounds really romantic, but like honestly, it's not always great. We fight a lot about like he doesn't really love the sheep, and like in his mind, money is hay. And so I've had to kind of really show him that like sheep can also be money, and not that it's all about money. Really, I mean, if you're going to do farming, you have to do the money because you have to live off of it. But if you're doing it for the money, you might want to become a different, like an investment banker or something, So yeah, I mean, I think that's just the reality of farming. But yeah, we've come to terms with each other, I suppose. And I think we get along really well, but there were a lot of years. There was tension, I rented pasture from him, and so paid him a rental agreement and then helped him with hay and stuff like that. And so we kind of had that sort of agreement, but it was a challenge. It was really hard. There was some years where it was like, Dad, you can't tear that field out. I need it for pasture. And he's like, well, I need it for money. And so we had some issues. I think, we're getting along really, I don't want to like get too excited about it, but we're getting along really well right now because what stressed my dad out so bad about farming was the financial part. And now I pay all the bills. And so he gets to do all the stuff he loves doing, which is like watering and irrigating and watching the crops grow, and he doesn't have to pay the bills anymore. And so I think it's really helped. He's a lot less stressed than he used to be, and now he hangs out with my awesome little grandkids, or his grandkids, not my grandkids, my children. And so our relationship has really blossomed in a lot of ways the last few years. And I think he sees that it's like not just a hobby, you know what I mean? Like he's starting to see that it's like, oh, you actually are being able to do this. So yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm doing it. Sometimes I'm just screaming at sheep and hoping they don't do something dumb. So the pellets are shredded. So they take it through a shredder and then cuts it into short pieces. And then just like you can pelletize alfalfa, it's just a pellet. It's just a press, and it just pelletizes them. And so it's a really, really quick process. And I know that there is talk in the valley about a very big pellet mill. I am not part of that. I am doing a very small pellet mill for mostly smaller producers. But there is talk about doing one in a big industrial. I do sell the pellets retail. Yeah. So, yeah. But mine's going to be like small. It's just going to be like, people like me, not huge producers. People who have like a little bit of wool that they want to turn into something usable. It's especially great on the really gross parts, like they call them skirtings, but it's like the butt wool, the neck wool. That I can't sell because people don't want to have the poop. And so it's really great for the pellets because it actually makes the pellets better because they're more nutrient dense with all the extra additions. Yeah.
How big would you say small? Like how many? I have no idea how you would size a pellet mill. I'm guessing.
Yeah, mine, and I haven't gotten it yet. I ordered it and I've paid part of it, but it's 125 pounds an hour, which is not bad. But there are some that do like 7,000 pounds an hour. And so I think the mill that they're talking about for the valley is going to be like one of these big industrial ones. This is more like something that you can fit in a shed, runs off a tractor PTO, something really small. But I think I think it's a good start I hope that pellet, the big one, takes off. I think that would be really cool to see the valley do that.
Is it a different process or not process, but device or machine for like the wool versus the alfalfa or the straw pellets that they're making?
Yeah, the one I got, I guess you can do everything. So there's some that are specific. The shredder is specific to wool because I think the knives have to be a certain design. But I think as far as pelleter, I think they can be universal. Yeah. But I think I did talk to a person who does alfalfa pellets, and he told me he did not want to run wool through it because I guess it gets caught in the mechanism if it's just, so it's kind of a choice thing. If you're going to commit it to wool, you may want to commit it to wool. So, yeah. Any other questions? I like the questions. It really helps because I don't know. No other questions? Any other thoughts? Okay, well, I don't know what time it is. I'm supposed to talk for an hour. Oh, I have more time, or I'm out of time? I'm out of time. Oh, perfect. You all did awesome. It was really thanks to you. I mean, I just was here answering questions, so I appreciate it. And come and visit my store when it's open, hopefully beginning of November. And it's going to be in Antonito. It's going to be really fun. I'm excited. I do. I'm really excited about it, actually. I'm trying to see a bad thing as an opportunity, but took me a while. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And it's going to have some cool classes. I'm going to probably be teaching some classes on felting. One of the really cool classes I teach, and she's here somewhere, one of my helpers, she does like raw wool into these gorgeous rugs with a peg loom. And that's a really great way for people who maybe aren't like into all the like fancy processing, but you can basically take a raw fleece, turn it into a usable product. So there's some really creative ways to do that. It doesn't have to take all the infrastructure, but it's also like small scale stuff. So yeah. All right. Well, thank you all. And I'll be here. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this microphone. Thanks, George. I appreciate you helping me out there.
Well, you don't need much help. You're doing pretty well.
It's a learning process, all of it.